Well, hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about type 1 diabetes in relationship to doing keto as well as intermittent fasting. There's been a lot of questions on this topic. Type 1 diabetes is a situation where you can't produce insulin anymore. The cells that make insulin out of the pancreas just are broken. And this is a problem because now you can't regulate blood sugars. So your blood sugar goes really, really high. So a person that's type 1 is dependent on insulin. Now, what did they do before they discovered insulin? They did low carb, right? Because if you lower your carb, you decrease the need for insulin. And that's really the point about this interview with Manuel, who is a type 1 diabetic, is that the goal is to take the least amount of insulin possible to have normal blood sugars, because everyone's worried about high blood sugar, but what about the high insulin that you have to take? And the damage is just as bad as the high sugar. So welcome, Manuel. I appreciate you taking the time out to tell us about your story.
Super excited to be here, Doc. Absolutely a pleasure. This is something that I've obviously felt like responsibility as I've gotten better in the subject. I've gotten more control over my body. Like the fact that you are here giving me the opportunity to share this knowledge that I've accumulated, I'm definitely honored by it.
Awesome. How long have you been a type 1 diabetic for?
So it's going on 21 years now, I believe. I'm 41. I developed the condition when I was 19 or 20 years old. And I have a theory that I believe that I was probably, and you can tell me what your thoughts are, Doc. I think I mentioned this before. I believe I was a type 2 diabetic, but then I didn't pay attention to my body at all. And I didn't know what the heck was happening for a few years, potentially, until I was actually living in Mexico. And then I lost so much weight, and I was going through the diabetic process of like having to go to the bathroom every 30 minutes, and I couldn't sleep well, and I was weak. And then my father was the one that told me, "You're describing to me diabetes." And that was the first time that I even understood what diabetes meant. So I think that I was a few years already in the making until the pancreas collapsed on me. That's my theory, and I could be wrong.
So this is an interesting point. I won't spend too much time, but I want to just mention, typically type 1 is autoimmune, but what about a situation where a lot of the type 2 diabetics after a while have to start taking insulin because the cells of the pancreas just start dying out? Now, this brings up an interesting point. If you never had the autoimmune situation, and this came from just going from type 2 to type 1, who knows? Who knows if that cell can't come back? I mean, I would never rule it out as an impossibility. So that's good data. Okay, so here's the thing. The first question is, before you did keto or intermittent fasting, you were taking how many units of insulin per day?
So I think I can say that I have been pretty much skinny my whole life, all the way to obviously the age of 30 something. I'm 41 now. Metabolism started going downhill. I wasn't eating that well, that healthy. And I believe that I was averaging before keto somewhere around 40 units a day, which, by the way, I go to the doctor's office, and it's crazy how low the standards are. And you know that really well, Doc. Like the medical community standards are extremely low compared to your standards that you have for people's health. I go to the doctor and I tell them, yeah, I'm taking 40 units a day of my fast acting insulin, and I'm taking 25 units a day of my long acting insulin, 2 types of insulin. And they look at my A1Cs and they look at my body in general, and they say, wow, you're in really good shape, which tells me, I always justify it. And I use that as like, oh, I'm in really good shape. I don't really have to do much of anything. And my wife would always say, but that doesn't make any sense, because there's so much more that we can get with our bodies and how much better we could get. And I'm like, oh yeah, we'll see. So I used to take a lot of that insulin, and I felt it was okay, because when compared to other diabetics that were being treated on these practices, the doctors were blown away with me. Some of these guys were taking 200 units a day, like 300 units a day.
Yeah, because the average is 0.5 to 1 times your kilograms in weight. So I don't know, let's say you were 180 pounds, you'd be taking about 40 to 80 units per day on average. But that was, but some people, yeah, they're like 200, which means they're eating a lot of carbohydrates to people to push down that sugar.
So I think I was in the low end. So I guess I was a good behaving diabetic.
Okay.
But compared to where I'm at today, Doc,
yeah,
I think it was absolutely terrible. Now that I look at it, it's like the hindsight, I'm like, oh my God, there was so much more to accomplish with the correct system. Obviously I've been close to you for many years now. I wish I would have paid attention earlier, Doc, a lot more in detail, because my life has dramatically changed. Even though I was at the lowest end of insulin use, I was still using anywhere from 20 units a day on a good day to 50 units a day on a day in which I misbehaved, meaning that I tried a couple of pizza slices. I got 4 kids, so things in my kitchen can get crazy. So I maybe put things in my mouth that I shouldn't have. So, then we go into insulin resistance problems and other things, because as I eat that stuff, my body cannot handle it. Like if I had a piece of pizza, and I have to dramatically increase my insulin use. So on a bad day, 50, maybe even 60 units of insulin that my body's not responding to. And I felt that I was pretty decent, because like you said right now, 40 to 80 is the average. I think I was generally in the lowest side of things. So right. It wasn't terrible. Right now, I can tell you it is terrible.
So you get on keto, you start doing fasting. All of a sudden, this is an adjustment. You're like, well, wait a second, I'm taking a lot less insulin. You probably even were nervous you're taking so small amounts. Like you went down to what was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like 3 units or something.
2 units, 3 units. Right now, a bad day for me, a bad day is 5 units of insulin. You know how I told you, Doc, that 20 was a good day, 50 is a bad day. So right now I went down to 2 on a good day and 5 on a bad day. All right. Incredible. And it's pretty dramatic. So like based on my theory at the beginning of the interview, in which you said that who knows, maybe I was not even a type 1 to begin with ever. So I've been decreasing it. So the one thing that I found is the long acting one. I use one called Lantus. The long acting one, I've been lowering it, and I went from 25 to now using 10 a day. This is 1 time a day, 10 units. So that one is the one that I have felt that is the most important one, that if I completely take it away, like here's the thing, I'm only eating once a day right now and I love it. And I'm not hungry. Like something that we can talk about too. Like I really, it gives me goosebumps, because it's an experience that I didn't even know was possible. Like the whole thing of 1 meal a day, I was like, it's just not real. It's just that superhuman. I can't do that. Now it's just for me really normal. Like I can go by an entire day and not feel hungry, and it's amazing. And you kind of transition. And so you go through the path of like first the addiction to food and the impulses to food. Then you get out of the addiction, and now it's the mental side of things. So now you move out of the mental limiting factor that you cannot do that. And now it's like, oh, wow. So I don't really need this. This doesn't make sense. Those French fries, they're not mine. I don't want to put them on my body. And even though I have this enormous movement in my house, because I have 5 humans living on the house and all these little humans that eat all kinds of stuff, I don't put any of that stuff in my body. So it's been a dramatic change. And I think it's been, now I'm on the 8th full week of like behaving well. I think maybe I broke it once or twice, very lightly. But it's a great thing to make food, the diet, something that is easy to do. It's not painful. Like going through the system, doing the keto diet, intermittent fasting, it really is light work. It's not really exhausting. It's not really difficult. But I can tell you this, for anybody that hasn't gone through that, for the last 20 years, I felt it was impossible and I felt it wasn't real. And I just pushed myself for about 2 to 3 weeks. It was difficult, but once I got through that period, then now I'm just cruising. It really is like optional to, the things that I put in my body or not in.
So this
Very smooth.
transition period, I want to talk about that because I kind of were back and forth talking about the transition because what happened was your blood sugars went down to like 50 or something. They went too low, right? And
so I was using too much insulin, yes. So
right.
I started every single night. I was waking up in the middle of the night 4 to 5 times because my sugar levels were dropping.
Yeah. So here you are in this trend, and this is why the transition is always tricky. You have to get supervision and all this and get with your doctor to work with you. But what'll happen, you keep taking the same amount of insulin and it goes the opposite direction, starts going down, and then it gets too low and you get shaky, weak, fainting, that type of stuff. So what do they normally tell you? Eat some sugar, right? I mentioned maybe have protein or something like that instead of the sugar, because then we just like spike it up and then we bring it back down. We need more insulin. So you worked that out. You worked it out and you kept adjusting until you got the sweet spot. You were a little concerned because it was going like three units. I'm like, well, that's the thing is, like, if your body doesn't require all this insulin, then why are you giving it to it? It's like, it has a function of regulating blood sugar. So if you're not eating sugar and also eating does trigger insulin too. So because you're doing 1 meal a day, that's another point. And then the other point that happened with Manuel is that he, one night he ate a lot of protein and he woke up, I think you woke up in the morning and your blood sugar was pretty high, right?
Yeah, so it's funny because obviously I've had the incredible privilege of having you guide me a little bit along the way. And I had a late dinner one night and it's breaking the routine. I had a dinner somewhere around 9 o'clock. I ate a big steak and I thought that I was doing something that was okay for my body. And I woke up with like very, very high sugar levels. It was 9 o'clock at night when I ate the steak. So here's the thing about protein, as you mentioned, it's gonna creep the sugar levels up. It's gonna do it. Now, it's not gonna do it so quick, like if you eat a candy bar or if you eat like a soda or something, but it will continue to creep it up. So I have an app that I use to monitor my sugar levels. And I ate the piece of steak at 9 o'clock at night and all the way to 3 a.m., the sugar level was stable. But it was slowly creeping up from 80 to 90 to 120 to 130. And then at some point around 4 or 5 a.m., it just exploded and it went to the 200s. And I ended up waking up with 285 or something around that. And then I wake up to a message, which is almost like, I don't know if you were like reading minds or some kind of experience that is like supernatural, but then Dr. Berg sends me a message that says, hey, just so you know, sugar, sometimes a protein, when you have too much, is going to increase your sugar levels. And I'm like, what? It hadn't happened to me before. So the timing was maybe 12 hours late, Doc, because if I would have gotten that message the night before, I wouldn't have had that big steak. But it coincided with me understanding and getting that lesson about also, like, listen, if you have a large amount of protein, it would also keep creeping up your sugar levels. And that's something to keep in mind. Now, I will mention, guys, that I used to have my sugar pills that they sell for diabetics. It's a big item. People buy it a lot. The diabetics carry them in their pockets and they use them as a solution to the low sugar episodes, because it's very difficult to replicate what your pancreas does naturally. So the diabetics just eating all this trash, being outside of routine, not really taking care of their health. They just eat, and then inject, hoping to replicate what the pancreas does naturally. And they very often fail. Here's the beautiful thing. I have a lot of those pills and I have buckets and buckets of them. Doc, I do not use them anymore. I don't use my sugar pills. I was using them back then when I was going into the adjustment process of like, wait a second, I don't need 25 units. Let me go to 20. Oh, that's still too much. Let me go to 18. Oh my God, I'm still lowering. 13. Let me go to 12. Let me go to 10. Like, so I went through that process and I had to use sugar pills because a steak will not increase your sugar. Let's say that I wake up in the middle of the night, 1 a.m., and I have a low sugar episode and it's at 47 or 52. I cannot go to my kitchen and eat a piece of steak because a steak will increase the sugar, but it will take a lot longer to increase the sugar levels. So my only option at that point, the adjustment was like, I need sugar right now because my sugar levels are going down and I'm starting to sweat. And it's a danger thing that your sugar levels go too low. The steak is going to take longer to bring that sugar level up. The point is that as I got into the adjustment process, the last time that I used a sugar pill was probably 6 weeks ago, Doc. The last time. So if I show you my sugar levels, they are stable throughout the entire day. And yes, when I eat too much protein, like last night, perfect example, we had another dinner. I went to a famous steakhouse here in Tampa called Burns, and I went with a client of mine. I had a big steak somewhere around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, not that late, but that steak gave me some trouble because it just keeps on going for hours and hours and hours. So I have a little bit higher sugar level than usual, but in general, I just put very little insulin. And here's the other thing, Doc. Insulin becomes so much more effective when you have, this whole insulin resistance thing, it disappears. So now, let's say that I have 190. Back in the day, maybe 2 months ago, I would use 6 or 7 units to bring that down to 70 or 80. Right now, I put 1 unit and it goes down to 100 or to 80. So the insulin in my body really responds very well just because I have this system or this diet in place. It's a win across the board. That's for sure.
That's so true because you start, your insulin becomes more sensitive and responsive to the triggers. So versus before, it just takes forever. The other thing I want to bring up is exercise, right? So you mentioned when you exercise, you're like, whoa, the blood sugars came down because you burned off all those sugars. But another thing you could do too, if they're high, is you can go exercise to burn off this sugar, right?
Yeah. So I think that if you were to ask me what's the most important component of everything that I've done, of course, the diet is huge. It's a combination of all these things. But for me, the working out is something that I have never done routinely. And it's very important for people to know, what are we talking about with working out? What type of workout? Because I'm a tennis player. I played tennis since I was like a little kid. That wasn't enough of a workout to give me the results. Like it's called aerobic exercise, Doc.
Yeah.
So it's just not enough. So I started doing, in my case, what worked out, and I'm doing it 3 to 4 times a week. That's it. But when I do it, it almost works like insulin. I am using a machine called Tonal. I'm not necessarily promoting it. I'm just saying this is my solution because I'm a very busy guy. So I have a digital weights machine attached to my garage, and it's very cool. There's many variations of it. Whether you go to a gym or whatever, for me, a workout routine of 30 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week, that's all it takes. That has been a major part of like my body not needing a lot of insulin. So I'm still like in that process, like, okay, I think I've lost somewhere around 13 pounds in the last 8 weeks. I feel energetic. Like in my case, I used to have like major 4 p.m. crashes. Those crashes are gone. Like I have zero. I have consistent energy throughout the entire day. And people look at me and they say, even my daughter, she's 13 years old, and she says, Manuel, Papa, you got to eat. You got to eat something. It's not all right. And I'm like, baby, look at my sugar levels. I'm great. I'm stable. Look at my energy. Look at my face. I am ready to go. I don't really need none of this stuff. So it's hard for people to adjust themselves. And my question becomes like, who decided that we needed to eat 3 times a day? Who's the person that said, hey, we got that 3 meals a day? It was a human being that decided that at some point a long time ago. And that became like a trend, which everybody agreed to it. Instead of like, got to find something that works for you. It makes you stronger. Look at me. I'm high energy. I'm stable. I'm using less medicine. I can guarantee you the pharmaceutical industry is not going to like this, but I don't need much medicine anymore. it's so.
Yeah, I think insulin is expensive too, isn't it?
It's very expensive. Unfortunately, my company has company insurance, and it's still expensive every time that I have to go buy it. It's a few $100s to actually buy it. It used to be a lot more, Doc, because if you recall, before the Obamacare, if you didn't have a company sponsored insurance before Obamacare, you would not be insured. You were already like too high risk. So the first 15 years of, or my first 13 years maybe of my diabetes, I used to pay $600 for a vial of insulin, of the Lantus insulin, $600 for one vial. And I had no choice. So much so that I actually lived in Texas for many years, and I used to cross the border to Mexico so I can get it over there for cheap, for a lot cheaper, because the United States will not be able to give me something affordable. So it's such a big business. It's like, it's insane. That's why people like maybe Dr. Berg and what you're doing, Doc, to educate the society, it's not really something that they love, because I follow your advice, and I have to use like, what is it, 100 times less? I mean, going from 2 units, from 50 units to 2 units a day, it's ridiculous. So if we repeat that across the board, these people are going to lose a lot of money, but we're going to lead so much healthier lives. And I remember my father, which you knew, Dr. Berg, he used to tell me, if I had to choose between high insulin or high sugar, he said, son, high sugar. All right. Choose high sugar. He believed, and Doug, you can tell me your opinion, but his opinion was also with his research that insulin is more destructive in your body over the long term than high sugar. And that's something that I learned from him. I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, well, if you just look up hyperinsulinemia and just you can just do wiki and look at all the side effects, you'll see exactly what it does. I mean, because they used to do insulin shock therapy and put people into comas, and I mean, it really is bad. One last tip I'm going to recommend for you, since we've been going back and forth, and for anyone else watching, if you're doing OMAD and you're especially at type 1 or at type 2, if you had your last meal at the day, or the only meal at between 2 and 3, you would probably optimize your results. I did a video on that, shifting your timing of when you eat, because you're aligning your meals with your circadian rhythms of your body. And so you'll get a little bit better results with everything if you do that, compared to eating too early or too late. So I'm not saying do that every time, but if you can shoot for that, even though it doesn't fit with the social, any type of social customs or anything, that would be the optimum time. That's when I'm doing my one meal a day right now, and I like it. But anyway, I wanted just to, don't want to take too much of your time, and I wanted just to kind of ask you some questions about this. And I think this is going to be helpful for people that are type 1, and just give them some hope that maybe they can lower their need for that insulin. That would be, I think, a good thing.
I think overall extend their lives. That's what I'm really looking forward to. I really feel that my life, which obviously I want to live as long as possible, as healthy as possible, my life is going to be longer because of doing this. And talking about your one meal a day, Doc, that you just mentioned right now, here's the thing about it. I now look forward to my meal, and that period is almost like a religious half an hour. Like I don't want anybody to interrupt me. The kids need to stay away from me. Everybody knows like this is dad's space. And I got to try it at 2 p.m. It does interrupt the middle of the day. The one thing that I have experienced, I did try at 4 p.m. and then I was a little bit too hungry at midnight, and it kind of gave me some trouble sleeping. So again, I'm still trying out different things.
Yeah.
The one that I'm doing right now that has worked out the best for me has been a 6 p.m. meal. 6 p.m. Okay. That's it. So right now, for example, as we're recording this, it's 1:30 p.m. I have no food in the entire day. I've had your electrolytes, Dr. Berg electrolytes. I love them and they travel with me and they're amazing. And I don't know why, Doc, but they take away when I get a little bit anxious or hungry, I just have an electrolyte cup and it goes away. And I go back to operating. Like, I don't know if that's supposed to do that. I just feel better with them. So I love the electrolytes. So I do that. And I'm taking obviously nutritional yeast and a few of your stuff, which is, it really is helpful. But at 6 p.m., I have a pretty big dinner. And one of my favorite things that I do, no matter what I eat, I'll always have an entire avocado and I'll put a lot of olive oil in it. And then I'll have my meal with a little bit of protein, a lot of salad. And I feel like even like I don't have to eat a big plate because now what has also happened is that I get full much, much faster. So almost like the people that get surgeries, like I have no surgeries, but you know, they say about the gastro, whatever surgery that they get, that they make the stomach smaller. I feel like my stomach has gotten smaller just because of the diet. I'm not that hungry. Right.
That's right.
So at 6 p.m., I'm done with the meal at 6:30 p.m. And then I'm just relaxed the entire rest of the day until finally it's bedtime, 10:30 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I'm still full. And I wake up also, just have my coffee. And sometimes I break the fast with like coffee with cream. Sometimes I don't. So it works for me. Like this particular thing really does work for me. And you got to find something that works for you. That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Well, thank you, Doc. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.